the Greens continue to break records, and this time the party has managed to move above both the Labour Party and the Tories for the first time in a recent poll. Find Out Now puts the Greens second place on 17%, with the Conservatives and Labour behind on 16%. Of course, Reform is still far ahead with 32%. Now, these are the list of seats the Greens would win. 47 seats, all gained from Labour, bar one. They would win Leicester East, which is currently held by the Conservatives. Notable figures who would lose their seats include David Lammy, who represents Tottenham. I don't think any of us would miss David Lammy. Also, Darren Jones from Bristol Northwest. We've got Hilary Benn, Lucy Powell, Clive Lewis, who's sort of on the left. Nadia Whittam, who is on the left, or whatever's left of the Labour left. Lots of lefts there. Stella Creasy would lose a Walthamstow. I'd be very happy with that. And the big one, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who represents Holborn and St Pancras. Look, let's be realistic here. Find Out Now do overplay so-called outside parties. Therefore, the Greens and Reform tend to overperform than usual. But the point here is trajectory. This is the second time that the Greens are polled at 70%. And they polled 15% with YouGov, who are, by the way, a well-respected pollster. So the main takeaway is that the two main parties, Labour and the Conservatives, are collapsing. Now, the media, as you know, isn't sympathetic to the left and for years ignores the Green Party, but they can do so no longer. Now, Sir John Curtis appeared on the Guardian podcast and explained the centre ground has collapsed.
If we take the opinion polls at the moment, they suggest that collectively Labour and the Conservatives command the support of just 37% of those with a vote intention. In the case of Labour, the 19% is undoubtedly a all-time record low. In the case of the Conservatives, we could have an interesting debate as to whether their current 18% is worse than or simply as bad as that under Theresa May in May 2019. But certainly collectively, the two parties have never previously been so low at the same time. In other words, we've now, for the first time in opinion polls, got fewer than 2 in 5 people saying that they would vote for those two parties. Of course, this comes off the back of the fact that at the general election last year, less than 3 in 5 people voted for those two parties. The 2024 election did, frankly, quite clearly open up the question as to what was the future of our two-party system. It's just that question is now clearly even more pressing 16 months on from the last general election. The House of Commons tells you nothing about what actually happened in the general election so far as the electorate is concerned. The crucial figure is not the majority of 400 odds. It is that Labour got just 35% of the vote in Great Britain, 34% inside the United Kingdom. That is the lowest share of the vote ever won by any government that then went on to secure a parliamentary majority. It just managed to beat the 36% that was sufficient for Tony Blair to retain a majority back in 2005. It was a low share of the vote that went for a party that people didn't know what they stood for and backed by a leader who had never been particularly popular.
I do always enjoy, though, as much as I really respect John Curtis, hearing people within the establishment say things that we've been saying for years, right? But the rise of other parties have been a long time coming. The general election of 2024 was, of course, not a huge victory for Labour, despite the amount of seats they got. Barry, apart from Jeremy Corbyn's Labour leadership between 2015 and 2019, do you think that the future of politics will be a genuine choice between the left wing and the right wing?
Hey, before I get to that, are you in Walthamstow? Because I'm sitting in Walthamstow right now.
Wow,
you said
interesting.
You were happy about Walthamstow. And I think the last election out, which, Walthamstow is one of the safest seats in the country for a long time. And the Greens, without even campaigning here, barely got more than 9,000 votes and really put a dent in Stella Creasy's majority. So, from my own constituency...
You must be very excited.
Well, I think there's a real chance of unseating her. I really do. And those statistics that you just showed are, they must be so heartening for the Green Party. But, yes, on the question that you asked me, wouldn't it be great to have a choice between different types of politics. Okay, I'm not delighted that right now one of those is a far right party effectively that has one issue, which is anti-immigration. But to have a real choice and to not be just choosing between two centrist parties, the Labour is not a left-wing party anymore. And it's really frustrating to see the mainstream media report it as if it's one. And yes, so to have a choice would be great. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Ireland, and we also, our politics have been dominated by two centrist parties. But what's interesting about Ireland is that we have actually seen parties go extinct. All right, it's different because we have a system of proportional representation, which doesn't look like it's going to happen here anytime soon. But there are parties that have been significant in Ireland over the last 20 years. There was one called Democratic Left, and there was a right-wing party called Progressive Democrats, who were a junior partner in coalition governments, and they don't exist anymore. There's the Progressive Democrats who are destroyed so much they don't exist. Look, that would be much harder to happen in this country, but yeah, I think that the Tories and Labour are collapsing. I was thinking today about how Labour are banking on the fact that the election is so far away. And we know that there's been reporting about internal conversations about how, for example, Gaza won't be an issue by the time the election comes around. But there is a precedent in this country for a government that's seen its approval ratings collapse almost immediately and never recovered. And that was, I think, the John Major government and the whole scandal about the European exchange rate mechanism. I hope I got that right. And their approval rating went into the toilet and they never, ever bounced back from it. So, I think Labour banking on the election being quite far away, I don't think that's necessarily going to save them. And I do think that we're seeing a real change in this country that might last.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the political crises Keir Starmer's facing is worse than John Major on their hands. And I mean, I don't see how poll ratings is going to recover. And then you throw in reform into the mix, right? I mean, it's very interesting. I know that poll we cited today, it's a bit of an outlier, but I'm interested in YouGov. They got them on 15%. Like having the reform at 1 and the Green Party at 2, I think is a seismic shift from when you think about maybe when the Labour Party took over the Liberals, in the earlier 20th century.
Yeah,
I don't see how it's going to recover from that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I think Starmer's approval rating is lower than way lower than Major's was, right? And Major never recovered. And what did you say? I can't remember what you said. Look, even the 17%, that was the point I was going to make. Look, the 17% might be too high, but 15% is still hugely significant. 15% is crazy. Who would have seen this coming, a few months ago? And I think I said earlier, again, I think that this has taken Labour by surprise. They knew that there was this threat on the right, but I don't think they expected this threat to come along from the left, right? And it leaves them in this really difficult position about how they react to that. And I think that's the other weakness that Labour have, is that they came to power with a majority, but not really a mandate, because they didn't come to the electorate and say, this is what we're going to do. They came and said, we're the adults who are going to be back in the room. I absolutely hate that phrase. And we're not the Tories. And so what's their mandate? Because they have no mandate, it means that they're on the back foot. They're just reacting all the time, right? So they've had to react to reform. And now they're having to react to the Greens. So again, politically, they're in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah, I also think this idea, though, you say you need to vote for this party to get these parties out. That's it's navel gazing at them. It's patronizing. I think what this polling is telling me is people are sick and tired of voting for the lesser evil. They are trying to express their real political views. Now, of course, does that mean I'm not worried that reform are surging? No, I am worried. But I do think this basically shows that the British people are saying, we're going to vote who we want to vote for now. We're sick and tired of the duopoly. And in fact, we kind of need to break the duopoly to go forward in politics. I think that's true. I do think that means we have the risk of the right and the far right emerging. But at the same time, we have the rise of the true centre-left and the radical left. I mean, the radical left I don't see is inside the Green Party. There's space for it, but, the manifestos of the Greens is just social democratic stuff, right? But it's an expression of people. I think it's really exciting. People are not voting against anything anymore, or potentially.
Yeah, that's huge. And yeah, I think it's really, really patronizing to the electorate and arrogant, right? To say,
Mm.
well, you have to vote for us because if you don't vote for us, you're going to get the Tories. It's such an arrogant thing to go to the electorate with. Again, not going to them seeking a mandate. And how refreshing is it for people to be able to vote for something that they actually believe in? That's what politics should be, right? And we should have these options. And yeah, look, I hope that this happens, and I hope that we have a greater choice in this country, because God, the duopoly is terrible, and also it credits the British public with no intelligence. It's like the parties are saying implicitly that the British public doesn't actually believe in anything. Again, it's like they go to the electorate with as the young people saying, I'm clearly not a young person, with vibes, right? And that's not good enough.